We will go ahead and get started with today's training on OmegaRecruit. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Heather McLeod, and I have with me today Sarah Beth Russell, who will be doing the majority of the training on OmegaRecruit. Both Sarah Beth and I are on OmegaFi's professional services team. So we've been doing a lot of training this recruitment season. Again, we are with OmegaFi. OmegaFi actually hosts OmegaRecruit. And so just a little bit more information on OmegaFi. We've actually been around for more than 30 years, and we provide technology solutions to help customers manage a wide variety of things as it relates to fraternities and sororities, such as managing finances, streamlining operations, recruiting new members, as you all are very familiar with right now. And we even have platforms and software that helps with communicating with members. We work with 57 different national headquarters, and then we also work with local chapters and house corporations and even IFC and Panhellenic councils across more than 650 campuses, alumni associations too. And we are the industry leader when it comes to technology for the fraternity and sorority community. We are based out of Columbus, Georgia, and we securely process more than $1.1 million per day for our clients. And we've securely processed more than $4 billion since we got started in 1992. So we are deeply committed to serving and promoting and advancing the fraternity and sorority experience. And we aim to make raving fans with every individual or group that we work with by reaching and innovating and acting with agility, which are all part of our company values. And we challenge ourselves to dream big every day and help others like you all achieve your own dreams. So to say that we're passionate about what we do is definitely an understatement, and it's this passion that has encouraged our clients to trust us to do the heavy lifting so that you all can focus on your mission and having fun. So again, just a little bit about OmegaFi. And so again, before I turn it over to Sarah Beth to do the training on OmegaRecruit and the platform itself, I did just want to make sure that you all are familiar with and know how to ask questions throughout the training. So you should see a little window there on your screen with a question box. As Sarah Beth is going through the training today, please feel free to type in any of your questions there, and I will try my best to respond to everyone's question by the end of the webinar. If I don't, then we'll send you a follow-up email. But let's test out that question box real quick to make sure that you all can see it and that it's working okay. So if you don't mind, just find that question box and type in your name and your chapter, and let's make sure that that's working okay. So again, it's just right there on your screen. You should see a little box and just type in your name and chapter. I want to make sure that that's working okay for you all. All right, it looks like those are coming through. Thank you very much. I see Meredith and Sophia and Jane. All right, those are coming through. Thank you all for testing that out for us. And again, if you have a question while Sarah Beth's going through the training, just send it on in there and we'll get back to you. All right, Sarah Beth.
Thank you, Heather. So we'll go ahead and get into the training today. Like Heather said, my name is Sarah Beth Russell. We'll be going through training on OmegaRecruit today. And for our agenda, we are going to go over tips for successful recruitment. We're going to look at login and adding your users for anybody who still has not completed recruitment yet. This will help you with getting started on that. We're going to go through the main menu and some features, and then voting and reporting. We'll look at what those ballots look like and how that information pulls in to your Pnm list when your members submit voting. And then at the end, we will have Q&A. To ensure successful recruitment, the 3 things that you can do to help with that is to make sure all your users are able to log in and have the mobile app downloaded. Now, the mobile app is for iPhone, so Any Android users can use that through the web on their phone or through a computer, but making sure your users can log in, that is the most important thing. And we do suggest having that done at least a week in advance so you are not struggling with that the same day that you start recruitment. And then also practice. There are practice files that we're going to look over today to use to set up recruitment. So we have those available to you, and those will help you just get familiar with the software itself and then knowing your resources. So reviewing any past webinars, you guys are here for the webinar today, which will help kind of get you prepared. And then looking at any of our help articles or the in-app help. And then we also have our support team that is 24/7 during recruitment season. Will help you with anything that you may not be able to find in the resources. Looking at the user email, this is what your users will see when you add them to OmegaRecruit. When they get this, they'll click to create their account. Now, if they already have an Omega 1 account or an Omega 5 account, as long as you have put them into the system with the same email they use for that, then they will be able to just log in and those accounts will all link up. Now, if you use a different email, then they'll have to create, or if they've never used before, then they will create that account. We'll look at here how to add your users. So within the menu of OmegaRecruit, you just go to your users on the left-hand side, and then here is where you see the user list. To add users, go here. You can either add them individually or you can upload them in an Excel spreadsheet. With the Excel spreadsheet, all you'll need is the email address, first and last name. And when you upload that, that is when they will receive that email that they can then use to log in. Some tips and tricks for going through recruitment. We want to make this as easy as possible for you guys. So make sure you're reviewing your uploads, which we'll look at today, what specifically you may need to do when getting your Pnms added with your Excel file, or if you use ICS, we'll look at that as well. And then you want to make sure you're pulling your reports for each round to make sure you have that information in case anything does happen, that you have all of that available to you in an outside source. So we do suggest pulling those reports each round. The last thing we suggest is if you do have national specific settings, reviewing those to make sure that everything is set up correctly based on how your nationals want that done. Going back into OmegaRecruit, we'll get started with going through the setup. Here will be the page that you'll automatically be directed to when you come into OmegaRecruit. And you can see here the steps for recruitment are listed. So we can go ahead and start with step 1, which is setting up your recruitment rounds. This can also be found on the left-hand side under chapter, edit rounds. So for today's example, we are going to do 4 rounds. And with the practice files, the round 1 will have 12 parties and round 2 will have 9 parties. And using the pencil icon here, we are going to update the names of the rounds accordingly. You don't have to update the names, but sometimes that helps just to see which round you're in, if that's going to help better identify those for you. Just all depends on how you're wanting that set up. And round 3 will have philanthropy. And for round 4, we will name that as pref. And as you can see, this preference banner here, it's always going to follow your last round. So if we add another round, it'll pop to that one. So pref will always be the last round listed. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to name it pref, but that will always be considered the preference round within the system. Before we hit save, one thing to note is when you're setting up your rounds, even if a round goes over multiple days, you don't have to set up multiple rounds for that. You can set up one round, open and close it at the end of each night. And like this with the party voting, that can be included to help divide up that round. So if you have multiple girls coming in multiple different sessions or parties, then you can designate that way and then just close voting at the end of each night. This way you are not having too many rounds set up. It just kind of condenses that and makes it a little easier, especially when looking in your Pnm list columns. And as you can see, there is a max allowed rounds of 20. So that's another good reason to condense that if you can, just to make sure you're not having as many rounds. This just makes it a little cleaner. So we'll go ahead and save those. Once we save those, they'll be good to go. And one more thing to note on this, when you're setting up your rounds, based on your national configuration or just in general, it's always a good idea to set up all of your rounds to start with. So you want to always set them all up before recruitment starts. This way, everything will calculate correctly. So just make sure when you're doing that, you set them all up at one time. Then now we'll go back to the setup page here, which you can always find under Pnm List. This is the setup page itself, and then you have the close button up here, so you can look at the Pnm list, which we will look at that after we do step 2, which is uploading our Pnms. Right here, this page will look different depending on what your school uses. If you guys use ICS for recruitment, then you can connect and disconnect to ICS accordingly. If you do use ICS, then you'll have a button here that just says import from ICS, and that information will all be pulled into OmegaRecruit accordingly. Now, if you use a different recruitment software, such as Campus Director, then you'll have to download an Excel spreadsheet of your Pnms from that software and adjust it accordingly to be uploaded into OmegaRecruit. I have my file here, but we're going to look at the detailed instructions and examples to see how that needs to be formatted. This is kind of an example of what that will look like, and a good thing to pay attention to is mainly these headers here. So you want to make sure that these headers are included. Now, not all of these are required headers. So some of them if you don't have any custom columns that you want to add in, which custom columns are just if there's any information not listed in one of these, you want to add it, do custom 1, 2, 3 through 6, and I'll show you where you can change the names of those later, but you don't have to have those. Some others you don't necessarily have to have in your upload, but these are the ones that you can have, and that those names that are associated with it that you'll need as a header to make sure it uploads correctly. And then you just want to also make sure everything is as plain as possible. As you can see, there's no special formatting here, nothing's bold or italicized. Just as plain as possible with that information in there. And then you'll save it as a Excel 97 2003 workbook or XLS file, and you'll be good to go. Now, if anything does have trouble uploading, it will tell you where that was in the file that the issue was, and so you can easily go in and fix it. So we'll go ahead and upload this. And this is what that unrequired column is going to look like. So as you can see, there's some that are unrequired that we didn't have in the file here, but it did not stop that upload. So this green box is always going to let you know if an upload is successful or not. So that is good to go. And now we can go back to our setup screen here. And when we hit close, we can now see all of our Pnms are loaded into the system. And if we look back at the setup, that step has now disappeared. So looking at your Pnm list, there is some menu options up here as well for this. So your Pnm list is basically your main hub of information for all your Pnms. So this is where you'll pretty much look at everything to see what's going on, where you'll look at how scores come in. This is a really important page and probably the most used page in this. So some ways you can get more information out of it. This little hamburger icon up here, if you click on that, you have some options here. As voting is going on, you can refresh or recalculate as votes continue to come in, and that's just going to help give you the most accurate and up-to-date information as that comes in. And then here is the select columns. So this is where you can kind of manipulate what is all shown in the columns. So if we want to add a few different things here, add admin notes, And always make sure when you're looking at these columns that you have all of your rounds selected down here so that as your votes come in, you're going to see scores for each round as well as your scores for your overall round as well. So that's important to look at. Then we've added a few other things here and we'll load that in. So as you can see, as we add the columns, they will pop into here so you can see what's going on. And if you need to, you can move those columns around. So we can put something moved around to go in front of if we want it to be more prominent. But if you do ever refresh this page, it's going to pop the column back to where it originally was. It won't get rid of the column, can with the select columns. It'll just move it back to its original placement. Now, some of these columns are going to have where you can add additional information. So like the admin notes here, you can say any notes that you want to put in here, like graduated early from high school. So if we need to know that about a member, you can put those admin notes right in here. And another one you can click in to update if you need to is the picture URL here. So as you can see, this is the URL for the picture. If you need to upload or there wasn't previously one uploaded for the picture, then you can use this to get that uploaded. Just make sure when you're doing that you are pulling the URL for the picture itself and not the page that the picture is on. And then another feature that we have here is the starred column. If you guys use the matching system, then you can star Pnms from here by double clicking on that, and you can use that for matching with your users, which we'll look at how to do that when we look at the user page a little more in depth. Then here we also have a slideshow. This is an in-browser slideshow that you guys can use, and we have where you can export the Pnm list. So if we look at the slideshow, we'll go over that quickly, is this right here. It'll take you into this in-browser slideshow, which you can use your arrow keys to go through, and you can use this menu here to select what will and won't be seen within that, depending on how you're wanting that to look. And you can print it by hitting the P key. It's going to turn this screen blue here, and then you can print from here. Just make sure when you're printing that you're scaling that accordingly. Most of the time, it's probably not going to be exactly to scale how you want. So just make sure you're resizing that so it will print correctly. And then you can hit escape whenever you are done. And then this will just export your Pnm list accordingly. You can do this at the end of each night, so you have the finalized scores for each round, and that will have that information, like we said. Pull all the reporting you can at the end of each night just so you have that in a secondary source. And then you can also search here for any particular information at the top. So if you want to look at just the freshmen, you can type freshman in. Now with that, if there is freshman with anywhere within their profile, so anywhere within their admin notes or under their interest, so if you use the interest column, anything like that, then it will still pull them even if they are not considered a freshman because it's in their profile. So just be aware of that when you're searching. And if you want to do an advanced search, you can look through this here. It kind of gives you a better breakdown of how you can narrow down that search. And then here you can sort your members accordingly by whatever you'd like. So if we want to sort them by party, once we upload those, it will show them accordingly, or you can do it by name, hometown, whatever is going to work best for you guys. So looking back at the setup page here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to upload parties from here. So we're going to do step 5, and this is where you upload your parties. This can also be found under the Pnm list under upload parties. And here you can see there are detailed instructions for this as well. This is going to be a lot simpler than the Pnm upload. You'll only need their MIN and their party. So typically with whatever recruitment software the school is using, they'll have an MIN, which is their member identification number. If they don't have a specified one when you pull their information, then you can label them accordingly to have an MIN. This is how the software recognizes the users and makes sure that nothing is duplicated. So this is also how you assign out parties. So instead of their name, which, some people can have the same name, it is going to identify them by their specified member identification number. So that is why this is important. And so for the party upload, you'll need to have the MIN and then what party they're going to be in. Again, you'll save it as the 97-2003. And if you guys are an ICS chapter, again, this will look a little different. You'll just have the import from ICS and you'll be able to do that from here. But if not, then you'll want to pull up your party list. So we'll do that for open house here. And as we can see, that was successfully uploaded. Another thing to mention on that is when you're uploading the parties, make sure that you are including all your Pnms. Now, as you go through the recruitment process, they may not be invited back to your organization, which in that case, you wouldn't have to have them assigned a party. But on the first night, you should be seeing all the girls. So if you don't have them assigned to a party, what will happen from there is it will show them as inactive in this list. So you'll just want to make sure that if they are coming to see you, that you have a party assigned to them if you are using that party voting. So if you're using open voting, you won't need that. And really the only difference with that there is party voting is going to allow you to have a smaller ballot, easier voting with that. So when you open up and advance your rounds, then you'll just go party by party and your members will only be able to see the girls within that party. If you do open voting, then they'll be able to see all Pnms that are coming to your chapter in that round. So this just kind of makes it a little easier just to see. So for example, in this first party, your members would only be able to vote on these 5 girls. Now that we are done with that, do you want to note on the setup page, we aren't going to upload any users, but you guys will do that. As you do your steps, they'll disappear. For steps 4 through 8, they will not disappear as you will continue to do these as you go through recruitment. So those are always going to be there for you to have as a resource as you continue through your recruitment process. Now we are just going to go through the menu. So we've already looked at our Pnm list, and here you can add Pnms individually if you'd like to do so. This is the information you'll need. Only the starred information is necessary, but the rest is a good reference to put in. All of that just gives you more information on the Pnm. And then we looked at our upload Pnms earlier. So this is the screen for that. So you can upload those in mass if you're not wanting to add them one at a time. Now the one at a time though can be good if you have someone join late, or you can just re-upload the same Excel file with the added member. It won't duplicate that because of the MINs. So that member identification number is going to save any of those from duplicating, and it will only add the members that you have added to the Excel file. We also looked at upload parties. So we'll go ahead at this time and upload for round 2. So again, uploading these parties, if you're using party voting, this is just when those Pnms are going to visit your organization. Okay, so now that we have that uploaded for Open House and Sisterhood, we're going to look at our matching. Looking at the matching here, this is a really good tool to use to help figure out which members are going to talk to which Pnms. Not everybody uses this, but it can be really helpful, especially if you have a lot of Pnms that are going to be visiting and a lot of different sisters and you're trying to figure out how to pair them up. It's not a primary function, but it can definitely help with the data. So here you can see you have 4 different criteria: recommendations, starred members and Pnms, interest, and hometown. These all here are what those matchings are going to be based off, and you can choose to select or deselect or bump up the importance of one. Recommendations are going to be based off of your voting ballot. So when we look at the ballot later, we will see how you can submit a recommendation. So if one sister thinks that a certain sister should talk to a Pnm, then they can put that recommendation in. You can make this required, and you can make the starred members / Pnms required as well. If you make it required though, then they have to have this. So even if they have the same hometown, if they are not also recommended, then they won't show up if recommended is checked. So just something to note on that. And then your starred members and Pnms, we looked at how you can star your Pnms within the Pnm list, and we'll look at how to star your members. But for your members and Pnms, if one member is particularly strong at speaking with Pnms, you can star them to make sure they get matched with Pnms that are coming to you guys. And then Pnms, if there's a certain Pnm that you want to talk to a certain member, you can star them as well. And this just kind of helps pull them into that category to better make sure they're matched. And then here's where you can select your number of matches per member and per Pnm. This does go up to 500. Just depending on what your chapter needs, you can do a lower or a larger number, but just be aware that the higher the number, the more data you're going to get. So if you don't want to have as much to sift through, then a lower number might be better. So we'll start with open house and generate the matches accordingly. And as you can see, those matches have pulled in. And if there's one that you don't think should be on here, you can select it and delete it using this icon here. Or if there's one that you see is missing, or you think a particular member should speak to a particular Pnm, you can add the new match using this icon and select the member and what Pnm you'd like them to speak with and save that. So that is kind of the basis of the matching tool. You can manipulate that in different ways to help you out to how you're wanting to match your members. Here are just some different reports. You have your comments report, and then you can do your recommendations. This is different than the recommendations that are on the ballot. So when a member recommends for another member to speak with a Pnm, this is available if you want to use it for alum. So you can share this link, and alum can give recommendations accordingly for Pnms, and then you can export that information from this. And then looking at the rest of the reporting, this is really helpful for you guys, especially with pulling at the end of the night to make sure you have that. But this is just going to show various different information. So here you can pull your Pnm report. This is going to show a summary of the Pnms and their scores. It's a great report to kind of start your list at the end of each round. And you can also select here to only include active Pnms, as well as including comments if you need. For the votes, same thing. This is going to give you specified the votes for whatever round you want to look at, or if you want to do it for all rounds, depending on where you're at in the recruitment process, and then you can choose how you want it to be sorted. Again, another way to access your comments. This report here is a slideshow similar to the in-browser slideshow, but this is going to have a little less information, but it will be in PowerPoint form. So if you prefer to have a PowerPoint version of the slideshow of the Pnms, then you can download that here. And then here you have your voter distribution. That is going to show overall distribution that just shows voting trends for the chapter as a whole. We also offer that information for each Pnm and user. If you go to their profile, which we'll look at later to see how you can look at that. But this is just going to give you that information broken down. And then lastly, we have our voter audit report. So this is a newer feature, but the voter audit report is going to give you any changes in scoring. So if at any point you need to change somebody's votes, then it will all go into this voter audit report. So you guys can update votes accordingly for your members and Pnms, and then this just kind of helps with the integrity of that voting, making sure you can see who updated the votes and when, and what it was originally and what it was changed to. So that is just a good resource if you need to pull any changes that were made. And that's kind of the reporting. And then we can now look at the user list. We looked at how to add your users earlier at the beginning when we talked about the email and how they can get set up. But this is where you can view all your users. You can star them from here. So if you have a particularly strong recruiter and you want to make sure they're starred for matching purposes, you can do that on this page. You can click to make them an admin, which means they will have all these menu options that an admin would have. If they're not an admin, then they'll only have voting options as well as able to update their profile. And then you can delete members or restrict them from here. If a member is set up, you'll see that they don't have a button by their name. But if they have not set up their registration, you can resend that registration email. So these members have all logged in and set up their accounts. But as you can see here, there's a few that have not, and you'll have the option to resend that email for them if they need that. And then if you click on an individual member, this is where you can look at a breakdown of their comments and add a vote for them if you need to. When you're adding votes though, make sure you are in the round that you're trying to add the vote for. So you're going to make sure that your open house round is the round you're on, which we'll look at how we advance those when we get to the chapter tab. And then voter distribution, which we talked about, this is where you can look at that for an individual member. And then you also have user report that pulls this following data here. Moving on to the hub. This is just another resource for information and data you can pull. This just shows graphics of key data points. With any of the graphs, you can click the little arrow here, see where those data points are pulling from, and download that accordingly. So this is just another good resource for data information if you want to review that at the end of each night to see kind of what the trends look like. And then the voting tab here is where your members will go to vote. We'll look at that when we go to our user to put in some votes. And then here is where you have some different tabs across here. So this is where you'll go to advance your round. So we'll go ahead and open up open house. We're going to do party 1 and save that change. So whenever you want to advance your rounds, this is where you do that from. Or like I said, this particular example, we have multiple different parties. So let's say you only have 8 parties in the first day. You can then, you don't have to advance the round, but you can close it at the end of the night, change the status, and then that way no one can vote throughout the night. You're basically shutting off the voting for that. And then here is where we looked earlier to set up the rounds. You can edit them from here. Like I said earlier, we do suggest setting up all your rounds at the beginning though. And then here's where you can edit your chapter. You can put in your recruitment dates. This is to edit the custom columns. So if you are using those custom columns, they'll say column 1 to through 6 for custom columns. You can change the name of that here. So when you're looking at them on the Pnm list, they show as whatever data point that is. For any of you ICS schools, this is where you'll find that ICS info to connect or disconnect from ICS. So for recruitment, you'll want to make sure you're connected to be able to pull data in. But if you want to run through practice recruitment, you can disconnect for that time to run through with the practice files that include those fake Pnms to upload and just get your users comfortable with the system and then reconnect to ICS when you're done. Now this function here is the master reset for your chapter. This function you want to be really careful with. This is what clears all your data from the system. So if you are going through practice recruitment, like how we have this example set up now, when you go to actually start recruitment, you'll want to clear that data so you can start your actual recruitment. And you'll go through the same setup, but just with your real Pnms and everything. This won't remove your users. This is just going to basically set the system back to before recruitment. So you'll only want to do this in between recruitment seasons or right before you start recruitment. You really don't want to use this if you've already started voting. You will lose all that information. So just be very careful with using this function. And even when you go to do master reset, it will pop up telling you what chapter it's for. So, it clearly lists out what you're doing and tells you that. Just make sure that you are using that in the best way possible. You don't want to lose any information you already have. Okay, and then here we have our configuration page. If you have any national specific configurations, you'll have your national Greek letters here to denote that page. And from there, you'll be able to see how your ballots, rounds, everything is set up. So this is where you'll see the information on how rounds go and then what the voting scale is and how that's calculated. So definitely if you have national configurations, make sure you are reviewing exactly how that is set up. And then we also have this training page here. This is for all you admins to give you kind of step-by-step how to go through the setup of your chapter and practice recruitment. So it shows you screenshots of how to do that. So this is a really good resource if you're having any trouble with what your next steps are. And then if you have any questions, you can use the Help Me tab. This is going to have various FAQs, and you can search here. If there's something specific you're looking for, you can search and it'll pull up the various articles that pertain to whatever you searched. And then additionally, you can hit Get Help, and we have even more articles within here that you can search for. So if you have a specific question, you can search here, or you can submit a request. If you checked out all the resources and you really still just can't find what you're looking for, this will send an email to software support. So you can choose your issue and then put all your information. With this, we do suggest putting in as much detail as possible. If you're getting an error code or anything like that, make sure you include screenshots of what's happening, just as much as you can in here. The more information you provide for software support, the better they're going to be able to assist you. So that is how you can reach out to them. And then now we'll look at what voting looks like on the member side. So this particular test member, we do have set up as an admin, so they can see all the options here. But now that voting is open, they can go to their ballot under the Vote tab, and this is what they'll see. So they can go ahead and click on the member they want to vote on. If they want to view any more information, they can hit the light bulb icon, and it's going to pull up any additional information that is put in there. And then they can vote on her, leave a comment, and they can also recommend a match and submit that. So we'll go ahead and put in a few votes here. And as you can see, as you vote on the Pnm, they will disappear from that list. So you're not voting on anybody twice. It won't let you submit a vote for somebody more than once, but that is just another way the system kind of anticipates that is by removing the members you've already voted for. And then now when we go back to our Pnm list, we can see the scoring that has pulled in for those members for the open house round. And you can also click on the members accordingly to look at their vote details, any comments that were put in, their statuses. So if at any point they are not returning, it'll show if they're inactive, their specific details. And this is where you can see their Pnm voting distribution on their end if you want a further breakdown of that. So now that we have gone through the voting and looked at how that pulls into the Pnm list, we're going to go ahead and open that up to questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Sarah Beth. That was very helpful. A few questions that have come in. I think I've gotten to everyone's questions so far, but I did want to just revisit a couple that I feel like the rest of the group could benefit from. One is Megan submitted a question about her chapter. They usually get their Pnm list about 10 minutes before a party starts. And so she wanted to just talk about what the best way is to handle that. So I'll tell you what I suggested, Sarah Beth, and feel free to chime in with any other suggestions. But, oh, and they get the list via paper. It's not a file. So I suggested to go ahead and make sure that the round and party is set up and ready to go. So that way, when they get that paper, the officer can get into OmegaRecruit and make sure that she can log in and test all of that in advance. But then when they get the paper, she can get into OmegaRecruit and go ahead and add those Pnms, which will likely, she won't be done until after the party has already started. But as soon as they're in there, then the members could vote from their phones.
I definitely agree with that. If you're not getting the Pnms until then, you could have somebody do that during the round. Typically, though, you should be able to have the Pnm list before. You can request that from your Greek advisor or whoever is in charge of the recruitment software that you guys use. With ICS, you can just import that automatically, but typically you should be able to request that information to be able to have it in the system. And same with party list, even if they're not set in stone, you can have a generalized list. And if anything changes, you can update the file that you used previously. So if you have all your Pnms in the party file with their MIN and then what party they're coming into, if any of that changes at any point in time, then you can just re-upload the file with the new information and it will overwrite the previous. So you won't have to necessarily make a file each time. But I would definitely check with your advisor on campus to see if that information can be gotten any earlier. If not, like Heather said, you can have someone designated to inputting that information if you have the available resource for recruitment.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks very much for that. Just a couple of other questions that are good for the whole group too is, Sarah Beth, could we just clarify again what a MIN or an MIN is? And that being the unique identifier that comes from either ICS or campus director and what that's used for.
Yeah, so the MIN, your member identification number, is essentially just to differentiate all your Pnms and give them an individual ID. So, in case there's two Sarah Smiths, you got to have a different way to differentiate them out. So that MIN is their individual number for that member. And when uploading your parties or any information, that is just going to help keep them separate, as well as if you need to add members at any point and you do that by uploading Pnms, having that MIN will prevent any duplicated members from being uploaded. So if it in the file, you have to have the MIN in there. So if that member has already been uploaded with that MIN, it's not going to duplicate it. It's only going to upload Pnms that have a new MIN number. So it just is helpful for giving them that individual identity within the software and helps things flow and function easier on the software end.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. And then another kind of FAQ that we typically get is around campuses that use ICS and how to practice if you do have that ICS integration turned on, because as Sarah Beth mentioned, some of our keys for success are, one, make sure that all of your members can log in advance, have them test those logins, and then also we highly recommend that you go through and practice in advance as well. But if you have that ICS integration turned on, then you won't be able to use those practice files. So as Sarah Beth is showing here, first, when you get ready to practice, you go to this screen, turn off the ICS integration, and then once that's turned off, you'll have the ability to upload those practice files and do all of your testing and practicing then. And then once you're done practicing and you're ready for live recruitment, come back here to this chapter information screen, run the master reset to remove that fake data, and then turn the integration back on. Anything you would add to that, Sarah Beth?
Nope, that is perfect. That's exactly what you do.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Well, that's all of the questions for now. As you see on this screen, we have lots of ways that you can contact us for help if you need it. Always first go to that Help Me button right there in OmegaRecruit if you need anything. We have a full knowledge base of articles and videos and lots of helpful information for you. So most of your questions can be answered there. If for whatever reason you don't find the answer to your question, feel free to send us an email. There's our email address, recruitment_support@omegafy.com. And then we will also later this week send out the recording of today's webinar. Anybody that registered for the webinar, even if they didn't get a chance to attend, they'll get the recording. Feel free to share that with anybody else in your chapter that may need to watch it. And that way you guys are ready to go. And of course, good luck with recruitment. I hope that everything goes well and you get a great new Pnm class. Of course, let us know how we can help. Have a great afternoon.